Welcome back, listeners. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. This week is going to be fun. I went ahead and bumped this episode up a few weeks so I could get this out as soon as possible because there's some rumors floating around. At the time of this recording, several sources have stated that there is a possibility that the league could be modified to the cactus and grapefruit leagues due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we're going to dig into the Braves' potential new division and their new potential division rivals. All right, let's go. Alright, first, this topic was suggested by Brian C. of the Braves Dugout Facebook group. Check out the group if you have not already. It's a lot of fun. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. If you have not heard, there are some sources floating around saying that MLB may do a temporary change for this truncated season where all the teams will play in their spring training leagues. This way, there would not be as much travel and other risks that come along with having a normal league. Instead of National League and American League, it would now be the spring training leagues. Grapefruit for teams that play their spring training in Florida, and cactus for those who play in Arizona. Braves being grapefruit. There are some speed bumps that could prevent this from happening, but I am not here to analyze that. Today, we want to talk about the Braves' potential division rivals. The Braves' new division looks pretty stout. Braves division for this year would contain the Red Sox, Orioles, Rays, and the Twins. Wow. This new division is not doing the Braves any favors. One large market team that won the World Series 2 years ago in the Boston Red Sox, a division favorite prior to the season in the Twins, a wild card contender with 90-plus wins last year in the Rays, and finally one not-so-great team in Baltimore. Let's start with the Red Sox. The Red Sox had a down year last year. The classic World Series hangover is what they call it. They finished the year 84-78, missing the playoff and coming in third in the AL East. By the way, doesn't this new division kind of seem like an American League East-esque division where they just swapped a few? Yeah, pretty much. Let's look at some underlying metrics of the season last year and see how well the record actually reflects the Boston Red Sox play. They were 9-8 in extra innings and 23-22 in one-run games. This shows that based on games that went down to the wire, where it really could have gone either way, they did not get super lucky or super unlucky. So that does not vary what their record reflects. The next thing to look at is their run differential. They were in the positive at plus 73. This means they scored 73 more runs than they gave up. By this metric, which is a little shaky because it does not factor in things like strength of schedule, it says they were a little unlucky and should have won 3 more games, which still would have had them short of the playoffs. They did play in a very top-heavy division, though, going 5-14 to a very good Yankees team, and 7-12 versus a solid Rays team. They also had 2 really bad teams in their division, which they went 12-7 versus the Baltimore Orioles, who lost 108 games last year. That is not a good look that they want. That was a terrible team that they lost 7 games to out of the 19 they played. They went 11-8 versus Toronto Blue Jays, who lost 95 games. So again, not very good against another bad team. Also a very bad look. They got dominated by their division, and 2 of these teams will be in their new division this year. Good news for the Braves. They also were 28-45 against teams with a winning record. So they weren't very strong against good teams, and they were terrible against their division. Let's look at their roster moves. First, let's point out that, like I said in a previous episode, that the Red Sox had to trade their best player because they have so much money tied up in players that will not even take the field for them. Now that Chris Sale is injured and is requiring Tommy John surgery that will put him out for the rest of this year and half of next year, they're shelling out $80 million on players that won't even suit up for them. That is more money than the Orioles, Marlins, Pirates, Rays, and Royals are projected to spend on their entire teams. Now let's look at some additions to the team. Alright, they added the starting pitcher Martin Perez, Kevin Pillar, Mitch Moreland, Jose Peraza, Kevin Plawecki, Josh Osich, Marco Hernandez, and Colin McHugh to Major League contracts. Wow. Not your typical offseason ads for the Red Sox. You can see why, though, with that tied-up money. They did acquire Alex Vertigo from the Dodgers, which is the only ad via trade of note. I will say that Alex Vertigo is a stud. He's very good. He's no Mookie Betts, I don't think. At least he hasn't proven it yet. But he's still a good player. Speaking of Mookie Betts, they lost their all-world outfielder, Mookie Betts, the only guy that really rivals Mike Trout for MVP votes in the American League. They also lost David Price, Sandy Leon, Rick Porcello, Brock Holt, and Steve Pearce. There are others, of course, but these are the biggest ones. By the way, after I originally wrote this script, it came out right afterwards that Steve Pearce has retired. So congrats, Steve Pearce. You had a great career. We all enjoyed watching you play. Here's to a great retirement. Have some fun with your family. This looks like it's going to be an even worse season as the projected starting players look to be Benintendi, Alex Vertigo, and Jackie Bradley in the outfield. Devers at third base, Bogarts at shortstop, Moreland at first, and Michael Chavis, and probably playing second base, and then you have Christian Vasquez at catcher. The rotation looks to be patchwork at best, with Eduardo Rodriguez, Nathan Eovaldi, assuming he does not get injured yet again, Martin Perez, Ryan Weber, and probably some spot starters for the 5 guy. That's not good. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not World Series winner type. I project the Red Sox to have the equivalent of what would be an 82-80 season in a full-length season. When I give these projections, I want to give what it would look like in a full-length season, even though this is probably going to be a truncated season. That way you kind of have an idea of really what we're looking at wins-loss-wise. Bleacher Report, who is not paying me to say this, by the way, projected the Red Sox at 81-81 before Chris Sale announced his surgery. If the Braves are going to have the Red Sox in their division, this is the year to do it. All right, on to another AL East team in the Tampa Bay Rays. Anyone else miss when they were called the Devil Rays and had those sweet uniforms? I really like their retro uniforms. It might have just been because the Tampa Bay Rays were really getting started when I was a kid. I don't know, but I really like their uniforms. Last year they had a very solid season, playing in a very tough division with low payroll, managed to win a wildcard slot with a record of 96-66. That record would have won the National League Central, just for what it's worth, by 5 games. They had a run differential of positive 113, suggesting that they got a little lucky because by that they should have won 93 games. They did, however, have a winning record against teams with a 500 win percentage or better at a 38-35 clip. They had a winning record against winning teams, so that's always a good sign of things to come, if not many changes have happened, or is a good metric to show that they actually were a solid team. It's not spectacular like the Dodgers, who went 45-32, but still a sign that they were a good team, like I said. They were 11-8 in extra innings and 23-16 in one-run games. This also shows a little luck involved, not a ton, but some luck. There's something to be said for being clutch in one-run games, but historically, if you have a really good record in one-run games, it means you had some luck on your side. A recent example is the last time Texas won their division, they led the league in one-run wins. Let me encourage you to say one-run wins 5 times fast. That is a tongue twister. Anyways, the Texas Rangers went on to get crushed in the playoffs. I do not have the record in front of me. I just remember that they didn't make it past the first round, and it wasn't even close. Let's look at roster moves of note. Again, not all moves, but ones of note. They added, and sorry if I mispronounce his name, Yoshitomo Tsutsugo from the Japanese Pro League over there. He is a third baseman / outfielder. They acquired Hunter Renfroe and Manuel Margot in separate swaps with the Padres, and they also traded for Jose Martinez. So, they did make some moves. I feel like they saw things they needed, and they went and tried to improve. Interestingly, though, even though they are, I would consider them kind of in a win-now mode, although they shouldn't go all out, as they traded Tommy Pham. Easily the most underrated player in the league, I would say. He had an above-average year at a 3.8 WAR last year. He has a ceiling of 6.9 WAR back when he was with the Cardinals. They also lost Avisail Garcia, Travis d'Arnaud to our Braves, Eric Sogard, and Jesus Aguilar, to name players of note. Pham is hard to replace, but overall they did an okay job replacing him. Let's look at the projected starters. Austin Meadows, Renfroe, and Kevin Kermier in the outfield. You know what? I think I pronounced his last name wrong. I think it's Kiermaier. Sorry, dude. Ji-Man Choi, Yandy Diaz, Willie Adams, and Brandon Lowe in the infield, and newly acquired Tsutsugo at DH. Now for what I would consider their greatest strength. A very solid rotation of Morton, Glasnow, Snell, Chirinos, and then probably an opener for the last guy. Very solid core of starting pitchers that will carry them through the season with ease, as well as being effective in the playoffs, which is a huge issue with a lot of teams these days, including the Braves, that they'll have the depth to do really well at starting pitchers, but they just aren't top-heavy enough when they drop down to a 3-man rotation, sometimes 4-man rotation in the playoffs. But, that being said, I project the Rays to have the equivalent of what would be a 90-win season if it was a full-length season. Again, this would be if they were in the American League East. That would obviously change, being in this new division that includes the Braves and the Twins. Bleacher Report has them projected at a 91 and 97. Let's move on to another one. Yet another American League East team, the Baltimore Orioles. Man, oh man, this team is a mess. They have a beautiful stadium and John Means, but that's about it. They had a record of 54 and 108. Albeit in a division with the Yankees, Red Sox, and Rays, but still. They had a run differential of negative 252, which means they gave up 252 more runs last year than they scored. And they even had one really good pitcher in their rotation on top of it. Based on that metric, though, they were actually slightly unlucky. Based on that run differential, they should have won 6 more games. They had a terrible record of 26 and 67 versus teams with a winning record, but interestingly did much better versus their division than Toronto did. They were terrible in one-run games at 11 and 22, suggesting that they should have a slight improvement in that area. They were 2 and 8 in extra innings, showing they could improve there too. I realize there's things like how shaky your bullpen is and things like that, but with that bad of a record in those situations, it shows that odds are there will be a slight improvement in wins based on those scenarios. As far as notable adds and losses, there really isn't any of note. They added Nate Carnes and lost Caleb Joseph and Tim Beckham. Not huge either way. I doubt it will affect them one way or another in the big scheme of things. As far as starters go, you're looking at a projection of Santander, Austin Hayes, Dwight Smith in the outfield, Hanser Alberto, former Brave Rio Ruiz, worst contract in baseball Chris Davis, and Jose Iglesias in the infield, Pedro Severino at catcher, and Renato Nunez at DH. This is to start the season. Trey Mancini will make his way back in, obviously, when he's recovered from his removed tumor. I also believe DJ Stewart will get some starts too, whether that is on the field or as DH, but I believe he'll get some starts. As far as the rotation, you're looking like John Means, who the Braves should really go after, by the way, Alex Cobb, Wade LeBlanc, Tommy Malone, and I don't even know this guy, to be honest, Wojciechowski, but based on their roster, that's who I would imagine he'd fill the final spot in the rotation. Not super exciting at all. Again, good news for the Braves. All things considered, I believe that though they are a terrible team, they also had some horrible luck. My projection is they would have an equivalent of a 62-100 season if they were to be in the AL East again. Bleacher Report has them projected at a 59-win season. And lastly, we have the AL Central champion Twins. Isn't it kind of funny that the Braves are in a division with all American League teams, or the only National League team? If we went to Cactus League division. Anyways, the Twins, they seem to have arrived a year or two early, kind of like the Braves did. They were second in all of Major League Baseball in runs scored last year. They actually were only 4 runs behind the Yankees. They had a fantastic record of 101-61. That is where the positives seem to end, although that is a huge positive, the positives I gave, but underlying metrics show that's kind of where the positives end as far as how well they did. They did make some ads, so I mean, obviously things could stay the same or whatever, but they truly did have a solid season, but there are some serious caveats to look at. They played in far and away the weakest division in the American League, if not all of Major League Baseball. Pretty much the entire division was either rebuilding or should have been starting their rebuild. I'm talking to you, Indians. They were 23-11 in one-run games. This shows that they were pretty lucky in that arena. They had solid run differential of 185 plus. However, if we look at what I just said, they were only 4 runs behind the lead of all of Major League Baseball, yet you heard earlier how there was teams with much better run differentials, suggesting that their pitching was not good. But this metric suggests they should have only won 97 games, a difference of 4 wins. The big one eye opener for them is that they had a losing record of 32-37 against teams with winning records. So if a team had a winning percentage better than 500, they had a losing record against them. So them playing in a weak division and basically dominating weak teams and failing against good ones shows serious signs of regression if the exact same season with the exact same rosters were played again. Don't get me wrong, the Twins are no fluke. They are a good team, just not as good of a team last year as their record would lead you to believe. The key for me on why was their weak rotation. Let's look and see what they did this offseason to improve. Key adds include former Brave Josh Donaldson. First, let me say, I do not blame Josh Donaldson for leaving. I loved that he played for the Braves. I'm a huge fan of Josh Donaldson. He played for Auburn Tigers too. Great defender at third base. Perennial MVP contender. He came, signed a pillow contract, did his thing, and I'll forever be grateful for the year he gave us. But the amount of money he's getting from Minnesota versus what the Braves offered him, ultimately, baseball is a business. And for you Office fans out there, The Office, the show, it reminds me of when Dwight Schrute says, "Of course I'm loyal. I'm just willing to go to the company that values loyalty the most." But anyways, some more of the ads. Rich Hill, who has a high ceiling but also a very low floor. Kenta Maeda, they traded for. Alex Avila, Homer Bailey, Tyler Clippard, who is a very underrated reliever in my opinion. Sergio Romo, and Michael Pineda, but he is serving a suspension that will likely last most of the season. I said Sergio Romo, but he technically was on the team last year, but he would have been a free agent, and they re-signed him. So technically it's an ad, depending on how you look at it. Either way, notable losses include CJ Cron, Martin Perez, who we talked about earlier, Jonathan Schoop, Rosario, and Jason Castro. The projected starters are as follows: Max Kepler, Eddie Rosario, and Byron Buxton if he comes back from injury in time for the outfield. Donaldson, Polanco, Luis Arias, who did not get the attention he deserved last year, so much so that I'm afraid I just mispronounced his name, and Miguel Sano for the infield. Mitch Garver at catcher, and ageless wonder Nelson Cruz at DH. The rotation is a question mark due to injuries and when the season will start based on those injuries, but it is looking like it will be Jose Barrios, Jake Odorizzi, Kenta Maeda, Rich Hill if he can stay healthy, and Homer Bailey. It's improved from last year, but so many question marks are involved with health. Based on all things considered, and again, I'm not really doing a deep dive on the bullpens. This is, so sorry about that, but I'm more looking at the offense and the starting rotation. Based on all things considered, I project them to be the equivalent of a 92-win team if they were to play in the AL Central again in a full season. See, I'm dropping them by 9 wins in the same division. But it's not just based solely on them. The White Sox will be much better this year and won't lose as many games to the Twins. The Twins also were pretty lucky based on the metrics I gave earlier. If they do indeed play in the Grapefruit division, it will be a lower win percentage. In my opinion, I believe they will win even less games, lose more. RotoChamp actually projects them as an 89-win team. Looking at these 4 teams, I hope it makes you feel better about the Braves' chances of winning the possible division. Their only real competition should be the Tampa Bay Rays. Just looking at records and the Red Sox name value, it looks like a scary division to try to win. But it is not quite as daunting as it first seems. The Twins looked scary at first until you dug into the underlying numbers, and don't get me wrong, still a great team, just not quite as good as we thought. Or may have thought, depending on how far you've already dug into them. The Red Sox should have their worst year in quite some time, and the Orioles are still terrible. The Rays pitching is going to be tough for the Braves. However, I still see the Braves winning this division if this were to take place. The Braves had a much better winning record against teams that had a winning record, meaning the Braves had a much more games against winning teams than any of the other 4 and had a solid record of 52-43. They were lucky based on their run differential, and they were 28-16 in one-run games. I also want to reiterate again that I did not factor in bullpen specifically for this exercise, which is important, but the Braves have the strongest bullpen in this group, though, by a long shot. It's not even really close. This solid bullpen will help them have less regression based on luck with one-run games. and as well as games that go into extra innings. I see the division standing as Braves coming first, then the Rays, then the Twins, then the Red Sox, then the Orioles. All right, everyone, let's take a break. Welcome back from break, everyone. So, this week, I have a listener question from Richard M. that I would like to talk about this week. This question fits nicely into the People's Pitch segment. So, without further ado, if you all have not figured it out by now, which I'm sure you have, I'm a pretty big stat head and believe that stats are super important, especially advanced metrics. But I am not totally oblivious to the fact that there are intangibles in the sport, like players being comfortable in certain environments or more comfortable at different positions on the field or in certain spots of the batting lineup. That being said, Richard asked, in your opinion, does team chemistry translate to results on the field, or do results on the field result in team chemistry? Well, that is a very interesting topic, and here is my opinion. I think it is a little bit of both. I will say that chemistry does not play as much of a factor in baseball as it would in a sport like basketball, where players have to be able to read each other's moves and such as like passing and when to throw alley-oops and all that mess. I say mess, basketball is a fun sport, I enjoy it. The only true equivalent to that in baseball would probably be how the double play tandems play off of each other, or pitchers being comfortable with their catchers, which is something, but it's not huge in comparison. I will give some examples of how the answer is technically both, though, instead of one or the other, as far as team chemistry creates results on the field or results creates team chemistry. If you look at a team that is in a huge slump, the negativity surrounded by that slump get into the players' heads and can be contagious. That can result in direct output on the field. So, in a sense, it is team chemistry that is negatively affecting the win-loss column. But, at the same time, baseball is a very individualistic sport, in a sense that your true output value does not really depend on other players. If you think about it, when it's a pitcher pitching against a batter, the batter, nothing else, none of the other players on his team can help him perform in that moment. It's how he does against that pitcher. So, the team win and loss column can be negatively affected by team chemistry, but at the same time, baseball is very individualistic. So in a nutshell, like I said, the team win and loss column can be negatively affected by team chemistry. You can also see the opposite happen. Back when Brian Snitker came in as the Braves interim manager, the Braves had one of the worst offenses in the league. They did not have any chemistry going for them. They did not seem to care. But Brian Snitker came in. Players loved him. He made some changes, and the Braves started scoring more runs. As the offense started to get better and better, you could see that the Braves' team chemistry was starting to develop. This chemistry carried over into the next year, as well as they added Ronald Acuna, of course, and the Braves ended up winning the division. So, my opinion, like I said earlier, and I know it's cliche, is that it's a little bit of both. But if I were forced to pick one, I would say a general statement in that chemistry, once it's developed, and by developed I mean positive or negative chemistry being developed, will help a winning streak keep going or a losing streak being prevented from being turned around. Like I said, I'll say it again, meaning that good chemistry can keep a winning streak going if it's already started, or a losing streak can be prevented from being turned around or ended if there's bad team chemistry and the team really doesn't care? Great question. Let's keep them coming. I love hearing from you all, and I look forward to more topics that you want to hear about. I love getting topics. There's many different ways you can get them into me: through Facebook page, through the Facebook group, through my the show's email at bravesdugout@gmail.com, through Twitter. You can drop messages through Spotify or any of the other platforms that runs this show. So get me your topics and questions in. I love getting them from you, and I'd love to address them on the show. All right, everyone. That's the show for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Keep the questions and topics flowing in. I want to put out content that you want to hear. Don't forget to subscribe so that we all get all the latest episodes. If you find time, please do me a favor and give a 5-star review on Apple so we can reach more people. Check out the Facebook page, the Facebook group, Atlanta Braves Dugout, Twitter at Braves Dugout Pod, the website, or email bravesdugout@gmail.com. I will see you next Thursday. Go Braves, and chop on.